This is the College Basketball Saturday closing line show alongside Ian Cameron, big man on campus. I am Drew Martin. We're going to be hitting on as many games as possible. Feel free to join in on the chat box. Let us know what you want to hear about. We're going to hit the 12 noon Eastern tips first and then go from there. We got some big matchups. It's not only Duke, Virginia. That is a big one. A lot on today's card. Over 200 teams playing, plus the added board. We'll get right into it, guys. Big man on campus. Follow him on Twitter at Jeff Nadeau. Welcome into the show. How you doing today, Jeff?
Very good, Drew. Always good to talk to you guys about college basketball. This is one of the best shows of the week. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on. And Ian Cameron, follow him on Twitter at Babano. Ian, welcome into the show. How are you?
It's always good, Drew. Saturday of college basketball is a loaded slate. I wish they would. Part of me loves the Saturday college basketball games because there's so many games noon to midnight. But part of me also says, could you space these things out a little bit? Give us a little more on Sunday and maybe a little more on Monday, so I don't have to handicap, over 100 games like this every Saturday. But hey, it is what it is, and we make the best of it. And hopefully, we can find some winners on the board for all of our viewers and listeners out there today.
Absolutely. And guys, we're just going right down the card on SBR odds. Feel free to pull that up. We got the sides and totals up. Hey, Ian, you bring it, space it out. Do you think Saturday college basketball is the best day for the sports bettor as far as advantages over the odds maker?
Definitely. Especially when you factor in that, let's be honest, added board games are on the agenda as well on the Saturday slate, and you get a lot of the odds makers not paying attention, not getting the nuances of some of these teams, pace changes, coaching changes, maybe the key injury that one of these lower level teams suffers, and it's not accounted for well enough in the number. Why is that? Because, it's just so many games, so many teams, not enough hours in the day to focus on every little thing that goes on with especially some of the real lower level added board teams. And if you can find an edge with some of these teams and exploit it, all the better power to you. And it's something probably worth looking into if you have the time.
Big man on campus. Hey, let's start off with some 12 noon tips first. And a team I know you know a lot about basketball-wise, UCF. The Knights hosting Tulsa in the AAC. We got 134.5 the total. UCF laying double digits here in Orlando, -10, seeing some 10.5s as well. How would you look to bet the Golden Hurricane versus the Knights?
Yeah, I would be looking at UCF here. This was close to making my card. I was hoping to get a little lower number, but yeah, I still think at 10.5, it's probably worth a look. You look at UCF, the awful loss to Wichita, just a tough game for them. They didn't rebound the ball well. Defensively, they weren't as good and as sharp as usual. And that's been one of the sticking points as we head into this game. Defense is obviously on the menu, and I think they're going to have some real success here at home against the Golden Hurricane. One of Tulsa's main ways they score is getting into the lane, getting to the line. 6th in the country in free throw attempts to field goal attempts. They're very, it's all about them getting to the line. That's really how they score points. They're not a jump shooting team. They don't really account to jump shoot. Only 28% of their points come from three, and 9. They're 9th in the country in points that come from the free throw line. So it's very important for them. And I've talked about before, UCF just doesn't really allow that defensively. Their goal is to keep you outside in the perimeter. Now, look, if Tulsa scores from 3 and makes their threes today, then that's something we can't cap. But generally, they're not going to perform well against UCF. With the fact that they're off a loss, they're at home, you'd expect the defensive intensity to be turned up here a little bit. I like the full game, and I think the first half – first half I had some real interest in, but it just wouldn't budge off 6.5. While they should be up by more than 6, Tulsa is a team that has been very streaky, very kind of a tough team to gauge at times. So I think UCF gets the job done here. This should be a game where they have a lot of defensive success. I would expect them to win by double digits here.
Yeah, big man, good analysis. I've heard you say before, look to bet against teams that struggle shooting against UCF. Bet on UCF in that scenario. Looks like you're liking it here as well. Ian, do you have any opinion on Tulsa UCF?
Yeah, Tulsa's not a team I trust in this matchup either. I'm not going to take UCF either, but if I had to, I'd probably lean in that direction. Look, Tulsa to me, very, very erratic. When they can shoot the ball well, they're pretty decent. They can compete. And when they're not, they can get blown out. We've seen Tulsa suffer some ugly losses, and it's been in games where they just haven't been able to shoot the ball well at all. That could be a problem here against UCF. So no, this is not a underdog that I'm particularly interested in.
Drew, you also look at the fact that against Houston and SMU, two teams that are obviously up towards the pecking order of the American, they have struggled against. They struggled against Nevada, struggled against Southern Illinois, another pretty good defensive team. Yeah, they went to OT and lost to Cincinnati, which, again, maybe they should have won, but they lost that one as well. You really kind of, if you're Tulsa, you kind of want the tempo sped up a little bit. You look at their average possession length. It is fairly quick as far as that's concerned. They want to get going. I think the best thing to happen to UCF was a loss. People are going to think I'm nuts, but they really hadn't been challenged, for wide margins. They've really just been taking care of this conference, and they're out of conference, and they finally got a tough game and had to go and lose. Those happen. But this one I'd expect they come back hard here. I just am not I'm not in love with 12 o'clock games as a better. Last week I played a game on 12, but it's got to be a real banger for me. This should hit, but something says that I just think there are better opportunities. I'll tell you what, if this was a Thursday game or a Wednesday game, I'd probably be on it. But with the amount of games that I like on the card, this just kind of missed the cut. But it's a very honorable mention play, probably.
And Big Man, I've heard you say that you don't like noon games as well in college football. Is that something to do with college students early on a Saturday, or what? The travel? Why don't you like that situation?
Yeah, I don't like it. I think as a whole, if you talk to most Americans, whether they're professional athletes or not, I don't think a lot of people enjoy waking up. It's not that great a thing. You always want to sleep longer. And these are kids at the end of the day. These are 19, 20-year-old kids. While, again, obviously they're different beings than me and you, I still think it's a tough thing to kind of get acclimated to. And it's very early. You look at what actually time do these guys wake up? 8 o'clock, I guess. Before your bones get going, I just prefer games later in the day. That's all. I've noticed that for me, sometimes you get these kind of slow starts and just kind of ones that I just generally like to stay away from. It's just kind of the way I like to do things. But I'll tell you what, if I'm going to bet a team early, it's a high-end defense team. I took Virginia last week, a team like UCF. They should have some real success here. This is a bad matchup for Tulsa.
Yeah, you might be onto something there. Maybe focus on more defensive front teams, like teams.
Do you know why that is? But do you know why that is? Why that is the defense is less impacted by early starts than offense. Your shooting gets really, really impacted sometimes by these odd early start times. Body clock hasn't adjusted to it. Awkward travel, maybe long travel that maybe you're not used to, or haven't had as many of those early road game spots at a noon Eastern on a Saturday. So, and your shooting legs are going to feel it more than your defensive intensity or your positioning on the court trying to contest shots. So it's natural that the teams that maybe have to rely more on their offense and their shooting to win games and cover numbers are the teams that are maybe a little trickier to trust in these noon starts.
It's no secret that if you start games at 12, that's pretty early. 12 is early for any person until you get to some breakfast in you do your stretching, you get out there and shoot around a little bit. It's just a tough kind of start to have. And, I don't think it's any secret that 12 o'clock games generally could be the game that, bothers you sometimes. I don't buy into some of the facts that your kids don't care about any, these are kids at the end of the day. A lot of them are not going to the next level. So, again, you're a college student. You have to have other things going on. You have a girlfriend, you have a life. That stuff gets in the way, and it's early. It's just a game, kind of a situation that I tend to try to avoid. There's 100+ games today. I don't need to focus on 4 or 5 games that start at 12 a lot of the time.
Well said, Big Man. Yeah, over 200 teams playing, plus the added board. We got George, Allen, Drew. What's up, guys? Kingsley, Billy. Jeremy Miller saying he likes Michigan -3.5 and over 126.5. Nice. Guys, we got 605, 606, Michigan, Wisconsin. And it looks like -3 or 3.5. We also got a 4 out there on SBR odds, 126.5 the total. Wolverines in Madison. Big Man, do you have any opinion here on Michigan, Wisconsin?
I like Wisconsin here. I liked it last night. I like it now. And I like it even more at 3.5. I think Wisconsin is just the type of team to give Michigan fits. Add in the fact that this is in Madison, and I think you have a real upset brewing here. You look at Wisconsin, spots you want to bet against them on, and I'm sure Ian will agree, and I'm sure you will agree. I want that physical team. I want that Western Kentucky. I want the team that's really going to bully you down low. The team that's not going to let Ethan Happ just, finesse you all day. Not going to happen. I don't think Michigan is a team that, while I do think they're very good, while I do think they're undefeated, I don't think they're a physical group. I just don't. I think if you look at Michigan, you look at Wisconsin, you put them on a piece of paper with all their stats and the team names gone, they're about as close as it gets. Neither of them turn the ball over. They're both very efficient on offense. And in fact, Wisconsin's even more efficient than they are on offense. Defensively, they're very similar. The one thing that both these teams don't do well is shoot free throws. So if you came in with a Michigan saying they shoot 75% line, that could be a big get in this game. That could be very important here. But they can't exploit what Wisconsin doesn't do well. I think both these teams are about as similar as it gets. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't see the fact that they're 4 points different here. The fact also that they're at home for Wisconsin, I think is a big get. I think they have the best player on the court. I like Wisconsin here. I think they give a lot of fits to Michigan. And I think this was where Michigan goes down. It wouldn't surprise me to see them lose this game. And in fact, guys, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world for Michigan. I hate teams that are undefeated as the season goes on. It's just a burden that you don't want to bear, and it really doesn't mean anything. I guess if you go through the whole tournament and go undefeated, that's historic, but it's very unlikely. I think these teams are very similar. I'll go with the home team. Give me the Badgers and Madison.
Boom, I like it. Big man taking a stand. Ian, what about you? Anything on the Wolverines and Badgers here?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't had a lot to say that he likes about Wisconsin, but he's liking the spot today for them in this game. And it's styles make fights. It's all about the matchups in this game. I had Michigan circled in this game at pick'em or better. Pick'em -1, I would have been in on Michigan, but not at this number here, 3.5. Now it's gotten up there. You got to ask Michigan to go on the road, win by margin, but I'm still not a big fan of this Wisconsin team. I know the spot's going to be what people are looking at, the spot, at home catching points. Well, the spot was all I heard about Ohio State last night. How did that work out? I told you, Maryland was the better basketball team. They're going to get the job done and find a way to win on the road. It wouldn't shock me to see Michigan do the same here. I still think they're a better basketball team than Wisconsin going into this game. It's a good point. They're not that tough physical team, Michigan. That could be something that works in Wisconsin's favor. I mean, John Teskey's a decent center. It's not going to scare you. I like the way Ignas Brazdeikis has played for Michigan lately. He has been absolutely terrific as well. So, but these are more finesse guys. They're not really those big, tough, bruising, physical, low-post presences that sometimes can bother an Ethan Happ, as we've talked about on many occasions. The one thing Wisconsin's got to do, get some supplemental scoring here. Okay, it's too much falling on Ethan Happ. It's too much falling on Demetric Trice. Someone else on this team is going to have to eventually, make some shots for this Badgers team. That's going to be critical for them going into this game here. Again, Michigan is going to lose a game at some point. Is it today? Perhaps. I don't trust Wisconsin enough to back them, but again, the price has gotten carried away, I think, on Michigan. So it's a pass for me.
Okay, passing there. And Big Man, coming back to you on the Wolverines and Badgers, like in the Badgers at home, would you recommend taking the points or maybe on the money line?
I think at this point with the Badgers, I would probably look to grab the points here. I do think they will win, but you look at the last couple of games, Wisconsin just hasn't had that little push to get over and win. They've been right in the games. They've just had trouble finding ways to win the game. You look at Purdue. They were in that game. You probably should have won, but your game goes to overtime and they fall apart in overtime. Maryland, they played well down at College Park in a game that, I got to be honest, guys, I thought that was a big mismatch for Maryland. They end up getting the cover and it worked. But, Ian mentioned the last game last night. I think the one big key difference here is, the team that we liked in that game, in the case of the better team, was getting points. That was kind of, I think, a real tipping point for Maryland last night. You didn't really understand why. I hear his point. I'll tell you what, these, like, Donnie and I call them false flag games, where you have a team on the road that is the better team, and they're either like getting a point or laying a point, or it just, the line doesn't make sense. These have not come in this year. They have not. The better team has generally gotten the job done. I think the big key difference here, though, is this is a higher line. I mean, you're getting, if you look at certain books, you can get a 3.5 on this game. They have to win by two or three possessions here. And for a team that has had issues at the line, it would surprise me if that was that students are back. That's the big thing now, people. These aren't just road games. You have a large stretch between Thanksgiving and, kind of the week after New Year's where there are no fans around. It's different now. All the students are back. These atmospheres are going to be wild. They're going to be crazy. It's one of the reasons where a couple picks I have late are going to be picks for me because of the crowds. I think some of these stadiums are as good as it gets. Wisconsin's no different. This is a really tough game for Michigan. These are not two teams that are separated by very much, although the win-loss record kind of says they are.
Good stuff, big man. Guys, let's open it up to the 12 o'clock tips. Anything you want to throw out here? I mean, UNC Miami with all of their injuries, to just put it on Larinaga, but it's still a 6.5 or 7 number in South Florida for this UNC team that has had their issues at times this year. Any opinion here on Miami, UNC? I'm looking to go with the Tar Heels, but haven't pulled the trigger. Ian, do you have anything on UNC Miami?
Yeah, North Carolina should win this game, but there are games where North Carolina just doesn't look right. Their defense doesn't show up. They're too reliant on a couple of guys for their scoring, and that's an issue for them. I mean, we haven't seen vintage North Carolina in a couple of their games recently. Kenny Williams goes in and out. Cameron Johnson goes in and out. Sometimes Luke May's got to carry the load for this team. Sometimes defensively, it disappears. They turn the ball over, too. They get really sloppy in some of these games lately, the Tar Heels. Last 2 games against Louisville, they get blown out on their home court as double-digit home favorites. Last game, bounce-back game against Notre Dame. Well, they were trailing most of that game. They had to come through the back door late to take the lead against Notre Dame and end up winning by 6 points in that game. So this is not a North Carolina team that's me clicking on all cylinders. And remember, that win against Notre Dame in their last game, Notre Dame's battling a ton of key players out, including, of course, Rex Pfluger. So that's an issue for North Carolina. They're just not playing that crisp brand of basketball. And offensively, you can tell they're struggling offensively because they've gone under the total, Drew, in 7 straight games. I mean, when do you see North Carolina on a 7-0 under streak like that? It doesn't happen very often. The pace they always like to play at, but it speaks to their offense not really gelling right now. I know Miami's a really, really injured, banged-up basketball team, but you look at the last 2 games. They covered both games, lost by 6 at a very good Florida State team, battled in that game, covered the number, laying 10 at home against Wake Forest, although Wake, not a very good team this season. I think Danny Manning's on his way out of that Wake team. He's been a real disappointment with that program. But still a good win for Miami, even with the absences. Feisty. They got a good coach in Jimmy Larinaga, gets his team ready to go. They're at home for an early start game. I would actually take the points with Miami before I lay them with North Carolina. I'd lean to the Canes here, getting 7.
Interesting. Okay, some good points there, Ian. Big man, what about you? UNC, I was looking to bet on them, just kind of fading Miami more than anything with all of their, I guess, injuries to speak. But any opinion here on the Tar Heels and Hurricanes in South Florida?
Yeah, I agree with Ian. I would look to grab the Hurricanes as well. This is another team that has had some trouble in some of these early starts. I mean, remember the performance last week against Louisville? I mean, UNC really had issues in that game. I mean, real problems. And, you look at Miami. I mean, this is not a deep group. I mean, they don't have a ton of talent on this team as far as outside of the 5 or 6 guys they have. But I'll tell you what, Likes is a real battery ram. This kid is really good. He's like an Energizer bunny. I think he's like 5'7". I've seen this kid. He's really impressive. Zach Johnson comes over from Florida Gulf Coast. He's given them some good minutes. Azundu's key. He's got to rebound the basketball tonight. We know that North Carolina, they live on the glass. But I kind of like what Ian said. I've not liked North Carolina. At times they do look disorganized. I don't think they have a legitimate point guard. I think they have a lot of the problems Duke University had last year. Duke didn't have a capable point guard either, and at times had issues. I just think this has a lot to do with Roy Williams. I don't think he's a good game day coach. I think he's as bad as it gets at top tier programs from a game day perspective. I'm just not interested in Roy Williams. I think he's a hack, and I think he gets way too much credit for what he's done. He's a babysitter at the end of the day, and that's it. I think Larinaga could coach circles around the guy, to be frank. I would take the points as well here.
Great breakdown there, guys. Hey, we're going kind of in somewhat order of the time tips. We'll go around a little bit here, guys. Getting to the 1 o'clock slate now. That 4, 5, 6 Eastern tip-off slate with Virginia Duke kind of there at 6 o'clock looks really strong. But getting down to the 1 o'clock tips here, Arkansas, Ole Miss. What Ole Miss has been able to do in the SEC, one of the more surprising teams in the country. Would you look to lay 6 or 7 here with Ole Miss, Ian? And also any other kind of 1 o'clock or noon tips that you're looking to throw out there to the watchers?
Yeah, here's the issue with Ole Miss, and I love that team. I really think they played great basketball, and Kermit Davis was a slam dunk home run winning hire from day one when they brought him aboard, and look what he's done already. They're relevant again in the SEC, and for Ole Miss basketball, it's been a while, since that's been the case. It's been many years since that's been the case, but you look at the last game, they didn't play well against LSU. They finally lose. They stubbed their toe. Couldn't handle prosperity. Couldn't, withstand prosperity. Finally a ranked team, by the way, after going into that LSU game, and they lose outright as favorites. So my concern is that the numbers have caught up with Ole Miss. You had a great window of 3-4 weeks there where you can just back Ole Miss game in and game out and cash a ticket at the end of the game. I don't know if those days are still present. Right now, they may be gone. That ship might be sailed from a value perspective. That being said, I don't think this is a great Arkansas team by any stretch. They're very up and down. I've never really liked backing them on the road. If I had to, I'd lean Ole Miss because this is our first chance to see Ole Miss respond to getting punched in the mouth, Drew. I mean, it hasn't happened for them for a while. It's been one great win after another. Everybody hailing Kermit Davis. Well, now you finally got knocked down a peg. You didn't play well defensively. You didn't shoot the ball well. Nothing went right for you against LSU the other night. I think maybe reading your press clippings, a ranked team finally, maybe got in your head a little bit. You weren't as focused. Let's see if Ole Miss is focused off a loss for the first time in a while today. If they are, I think they can handle business against Arkansas. So I'd lean Ole Miss, but very interesting game for me to just sit back, observe, see what we get from Kermit Davis' team.
Yeah, big man. I mean, Ian brings up the point of a loss actually could be healthy for this team. They are heading, into the pavilion. They have played well. Laying 7. Would you look to be on the Rebels?
Yeah, Drew, it's funny you said about loss. Listen, I'm a big proponent of losses once in a while. I think you got to get, you got to get slapped in the face once or twice. That builds character. That builds, kind of being a man, and that builds being a winner. Look. All the fucking losers that say they've never lost, they're the kings of it. They're not. There's a reason they say that, because they have nothing else to say. Sometimes you got to lose, Drew. I mean, it's a good thing. And that was good for Mississippi. I think they were, like as all of you guys said, reading the reading the press clippings, kind of buying into themselves a little bit. And they at home get beat up against that Tiger team. I think today they bounce back. I think the over's got some value in this game. Ole Miss has been very good on offense. I'm not sure that I totally believe in Arkansas on defense. I think points will be scored in this game. It's not a game that I have much interest in, kind of in the middle of the season here. But I'd expect Mississippi to bounce back. Am I ready to lay 3 possessions here? Not really. I mean, I think one thing about Arkansas is these teams are always – they always play hard. Daniel Gafford's a pretty good player. But, Drew, I wanted to throw out 2 games here in this time slot, one of which is Loyola Chicago at home or on the road against Indiana State. They beat Indiana State by 35 a couple weeks ago. And I'm looking at this game here, and I'm not seeing really why it will be a ton different here. Are they going to win by 35? No, but, I mean – Indiana State, what have they really shown you? I mean, they're very much reliant on the 2-point shot. Illinois Chicago's defense has really or Loyola Chicago's defense has really turned up. I think they're the best defensive rebounding team in the country. They really limit second chance opportunities. I like what I'm seeing out of this Loyola Chicago team. They've won 4 of 5. They're starting to get that tenacity back. One of the big reasons for that is Lucas Williamson is back. Lucas Williamson is their best defender. He was out for a while, 6'4" sophomore. He's given them some really good defensive minutes and really has been the catalyst to their defensive success. So I think on the road here, I think Loyola is starting to get a little bit of their mojo back. Look, are they going to make a run to the Final Four? No. But I think they can definitely win this conference. This is a conference right now that's very open. Wichita's long gone. Valpo's down. Illinois State is bottled it a lot of the season. Missouri State's down. Northern Iowa's down. If you're going to go and win this conference again, it's your chance. You are the big boys in this conference, and they're starting to look like it. I like Loyola on the road at Indiana State. Indiana State they don't really do much for me. One other one quickly. I've talked about this team ad nauseum, Western Kentucky. They're laying a big number today against the Florida Atlantic Owls. And I got to wonder, I mean, I'm sure Ian and you have seen this. You got to wonder, where's the confidence right now for this Hilltopper team? That's 3 straight games that they've blown a 20-point lead in or more, and they lose again on Thursday against FIU, a game that they had no business losing. They got beat up last week and lost against Marshall. Remember the old Dominion game? You got to wonder where the confidence is. I think a lot of it has to do, guys, with the internal problems this team has. I think Rick Stansbury is losing this team a little bit. Mitchell Robinson left this team last year for no reason. I think a lot of it had to do with Rick Stansbury. It wouldn't surprise me down the road, guys, if something comes out on Rick Stansbury. I got to wonder about his coaching strategies here. I think he's done some weird things to get some of these kids to go to Western Kentucky. And you look at the internal problems right now with them. Lamonte Bearden is basically a guy that I think has him by the balls a little bit, or maybe the other way around. Deshaun Murray left this team, the Auburn player. Bearden's been in the doghouse. Then they get him out and they put him in, and he kind of ruins the continuity. Then they take him out and he gets pissed off. There's a lot of weird things going on with this team right now, and I think it has a lot to do with their struggles lately. You have to read internally to some of these things. There's no reason why players should be leaving school as much as players leave West Kentucky. This is now 2. I think you're working on another one. I got to wonder how that's going to breed their confidence today. FIU, I mean, Ian, let me ask you, are you running to the window to bet on West Kentucky laying 11? I mean, come on.
Well, when you blow a lead to Old Dominion, okay, that's a decent team. You blow a lead to Marshall. Okay, Marshall's a pretty good team in this conference, tournament team last year. But when you're doing that to FIU, like you did in your last game, that's a big red flag. That's the problem. That's at the point now where I'm saying, okay, that's enough. That can't happen. I can let it slide with ODU because that's a decent basketball team. That's a good basketball team. Same with Marshall. But FIU, you shouldn't be blowing that kind of lead to. You're not closing games outright. You're not making big shots. You're not getting stops at the end. You're tentative with the basketball. I'm seeing all the signs of a team that's fragile and has no confidence closing out games right now. That's Western Kentucky. I can't lay points with them in this kind of price range right now. It doesn't matter who they're playing.
Good stuff, big man. Thanks for bringing up that game. Ian, good stuff as well. Guys, in the chat box, thanks for chiming in. Jim Bean saying, don't take Duke blindly. People look into these games before you bet.
Jim, none of us look at games before we bet them. I mean, come on. I mean, what is he even talking about? We all know Trey Jones is out. What's he talking about?
We're getting into Duke, Virginia in just a second, guys. We're in the 2:00 slate right now, moving down the card. Over 300 people watching right now. We really appreciate it, guys. If you give us the like sign, the thumbs up button, we got a over under of 100 on the show. And if you like betting overs, we're betting the overs, so we got to get to 100 on the likes. Please help us out with the like button there, guys. Moving, Kansas, West Virginia, big man. I want to get your opinion on this. West Virginia, obviously struggling in the half court offense, going up against Kansas laying 4.5. It is a short number. I thought this number would be a lot more. I'm looking to be on the Jayhawks here. Can you talk me off of it, or are you in agreement with Kansas being the side?
Well, I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. I think if you like it, you should play it. But here's the thing. I mean, point will West Virginia do something good? I mean, I'm waiting for it. It hasn't happened, though. And maybe it won't happen. But you got to figure it's going to. I just wonder about them. I mean, when their press is working, it's great. The problem is you've just had no one to really run it this year. You're losing a guy like Javon Carter is about as tough as it gets. It's like Navy losing Keenan Reynolds or one of these teams losing a high-end player. It's just real hard to do. I mean, he is so dynamic and so important to your offense. You also don't have Konate, which is hurt you. And he could be a big if he was in this game, I'd have a real interest in West Virginia. But he's not. Again, I want to try to sell West Virginia, and maybe they can hang around here in the fact that I think one of their neutralizers is they are a great rebounding team. They always are under Bob Huggins. He's one of the great rebounding coaches in the country. But is that going to be enough? I mean, their really only reliance on scoring in the half court is getting to the free throw line. And again, I mean, that's not a real way to sustain offense. Kansas should be in. They have to be focused here. Morgantown is tough. They're always going to support their team no matter what. And I've talked about this before. One of the great things about conference play is we can talk about how much it means, but to be honest, it really doesn't mean ugats, to be honest. I mean, all these teams get the ability to go to a conference tournament and win it. So is West Virginia not playing well? Sure. They're 0-5 in this conference, but in the back of your head, you get some momentum, you beat a Kansas, you get some motivation, and then you're kind of in, and you have a shot, and you look forward to later in the season. Why can't they win? Why can't they cover? I don't think they will, but this is a dangerous game. I wish Konate was in, and I'd have a little bit better feel for it. But, hey, Drew, listen, if you like Kansas, do it. But there's something about Kansas right now. I think the D'Souza stuff is a bother, which, by the way, he should play. That is one of the great injustices in a corrupt, mafia-like run organization that the NCAA is. What a joke. But I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm kind of up in the air on this one, Drew.
Ian, want to get to you and Corey in the chat box saying worst WVU team in quite some time. They are a bad team this year. Kansas by double digits today. Corey, I agree with you, but I think Big Man brings up some good points. There isn't something right with Kansas as well, so laying points on the road, it can be a little tricky. West Virginia, though, I mean, Big Man brought up the point of kind of at some point they will turn it around or might turn it around. He wasn't saying to bet that, but that isn't a profile I like to bet. It's kind of like, grabbing the falling knife type deal. Yeah. I will still kind of pile against that, which I have been doing and will likely get there today. But Ian, any kind of analysis on going on West Virginia today, or do you agree the Jayhawks are the side?
Well, it's tough. It really is tough for me from a side perspective in this game because you look at this West Virginia team, there's not much to like. I mean, they've lost, 5 straight games, 0-5 right now in the Big 12 season, just coming off an absolutely embarrassing 98-67 loss to TCU. I mean, non-competitive. Bob Huggins was furious after the game. He was a grizzly bear, not a huggy bear, following that game against TCU. He was not happy. You just worry that does West Virginia have anything of quality that they can give to Kansas here? That's the question, because I think whatever best effort, best punch West Virginia has right now, you're going to see it from them today in this game. And let's not kid ourselves with Kansas on the road. They lost to Arizona State on the road. That loss is not looking as good right now. Arizona State is as Jekyll and Hyde as it gets right now. I can't figure that Sun Devils team out. They got blown out by Iowa State on the road. And then against Baylor, hang on and win by 5. This is not the kind of team I'm comfortable with laying points on the road, this Kansas. I'm not. Even though they've got the matchup edges, they should win this game. They have the chance to win this comfortably because who knows where West Virginia's at mentally, psychologically right now. I can't lay these points with Kansas. I'm interested more in the total in this game. It's at 149.5 here. I think you're going to see this game get up and over this total because here's what Kansas is doing since the Azubuike injury. They've gone small. They've picked up the pace. They've quickened the tempo. They're trying to get up and down the basketball court a lot more. We saw it in their last game, 80-78, lots of possessions, lots of up and down play in that game from Kansas, 158 points. I think you're going to see, and Kansas is playing that way and transition to play that way, more guard-oriented lineup since Azubuike's injury. And I think that continues today. And if they play up and down, that might make West Virginia a little bit more effective in their press and a little bit more efficient offensively, because we've talked about it. You know that, Drew, big man, you know that. They can't execute in the half court offensively, this West Virginia team. They never have been able to. Even their better West Virginia teams last year, 2 years ago, they didn't execute well in the half court. They could miss, they could go 0 for 9 shooting the basketball in a row in a half court set. That is how bad they were sometimes executing in the half court. I think if Kansas plays up and down, and all indications since Azubuike's injury is that they have played that way in the last couple of games, I think it's going to allow West Virginia to be a little bit more effective offensively and a little bit more productive. So for that reason, if I'm going to bet this game, I'm going to go over 149.5.
Okay, liking the over there, Ian. Guys, moving down the slate, we got 3 and 4 o'clock tips here. 6-7-3, 6-7-4 looked a little enticing to me. TCU, Kansas State, 133. The total looks like Kansas State -2.5 or -3 on SBR odds. Some change here. Fisher out for the season now for TCU. And Kansas State getting their best, or one of their best shooters out back. Wade, do you think there's any value here, big man, in this Big 12 matchup, or any other 3 or 4 o'clocks you want to throw out?
Yeah, I think if you like Kansas State, you really, and you didn't get it early, and now you want to bet it, I think you should go find something else to do with your time. You wasted it. You should have bet it at 1 or on the money line. It's now up to 3, and the value is gone. K-State is a team that I like. They're a bet on probability here. They're at home. But I wonder with them here in this game, they shot the ball real well against Oklahoma. I went back and watched that game full from start to finish. And, it was really just a case of Barry Brown and Dean Wade shot the ball really well. I have concerns on if K-State can do that game to game, every game in a row. TCU is a team that I think even without Jalen Fisher, while it hurts, they're still a pretty good team. The problem you have at TCU now is they have turned the ball over too much without Fisher. I mean, and I'll tell you, that's another mysterious transfer as well. I don't know what's going on with him. He gets injured and just transfers. Maybe he's just not into Jamie Dixon. I don't know. But I would hope that, in this game, you would think at this point, I think it's kind of a lot like I think it's a close game like the Michigan-Wisconsin game, but I am worried a bit about TCU. They've turned the ball over a bit more now that Fisher's gone. I wonder if K-State can maintain that great offense that they had against Oklahoma. Another game I'm looking at here, just after that 3 or 4 time, it's Temple Penn. Obviously, guys, I know a lot about this Temple team. This is an interesting game. It's a dangerous game for the Owls because it's a out-of-conference Big 5 game in the middle of their conference season. They have Memphis on deck. They're off a little stretch where they had a lot of games and a lot of tough games. UCF, Wichita, Houston had a trouble against South Florida. He had to go down to North Carolina and really kind of pull away from a pesky ECU team. Now you're at home, kind of sandwiched in between a big game at home against Memphis on Thursday. This Penn team is no secret to upsetting teams. They upset Villanova earlier this year. Steve Donahue's got a really sound, fundamental basketball team per usual. They're smarter than everyone else. They're a good basketball team, good IQ. AJ Burdeur is a good player. This is a team that has had the same players for a long time. You look at it, experience, 88th in the country. Almost every starter is a sophomore or better. You definitely want that late in seasons. It's a good thing to have continuity, and they have it. And, look at Temple. Can they pull away and win by double digits? It's been a problem under Fran Dunphy. Every season they find ways to lose games that they have no business losing. They almost did it against South Florida. They've done it before against New Hampshire and weird teams like that at home. I want to know that this team is focused, and this is another step in the Dunphy era. Can they focus on an out-of-conference team that they don't care about beating late in the season, middle of the season, late to the season? I want to see that they can do that. Maybe look at Temple first half. I know Donnie Rightside and I have talked about that. He's been on them in the first half. This team has generally did really well in the first half. It's that second half where the second half starts and that 16-minute timeout where they, for whatever reason, seem to always give up that 7-0 run and get the team right back into the game. So if I'm looking at Temple, I'm looking more first half as opposed to full game. Wouldn't surprise me if Penn shorten this lead late and make this one a game.
Temple first half. Okay, Ian, anything on Temple and also the K-State game? We got Alan saying Wade being back helps K-State a lot. Got him -1 overnight. Also, does it help him betting K-State over the total? That's what I'm thinking there's value today in the over TCU Kansas State.
Yeah, I mean, K-State, and you're always going to get decent numbers with the overs, like 132.5, 133. So that's usually what you get. You get high 120s, low 130s in K-State games. So you could have the value there now with, Dean Wade back. Remember, Kamau Stokes is another guy that was out for a couple of games for Kansas State. He's come back as well. They're a better offensive team, and we saw that in their last game. Temple is, we know Quentin Rose, Shiz Alston, Nate Pierre-Louis, the big three, as I like to call them with Temple. They're great. They've done a great job, but they've got to stop with the second half sleepwalk. I mean, this is getting ridiculous with Temple. We have a great start to the game, and we come out and we fall asleep in the first 5 minutes of the second half, and a 15-point lead becomes a 2-point lead or a 4-point lead. It's happened to them way too many times, and if the competition increases for them, that's going to cost them at some point. So that's something to watch out for. Penn is capable, no doubt about it. As Big Man mentioned, they beat Villanova earlier this season. I think they can hang with Temple. I'm going to go through a couple of my games at the 4 o'clock window right now. I like St. John's plus the 5 against Butler. I don't like Butler much this season. I don't think this is a vintage Butler team by any stretch of the imagination. Good for you. You beat DePaul on the road. Big deal. Who cares? Now you got to come back home and play a good St. John's team.
Hey, Ian,
yes.
How good is Pons?
Pons is amazing. Look, he comes back and look at the game he has. First game back for them against Creighton on Tuesday night. It was fantastic, and they pull away from Creighton in the second half. He means everything to the team, and we saw them lose to DePaul in the game without him. So that tells you all you need to know about how big Shamari Pons is. Now, the one concern is St. John's been drilled repeatedly at Hinkle Fieldhouse. It's not been a great place for them, but I don't think much of Butler this season. I don't. St. John's is good in the road underdog role. They covered at Villanova as a road underdog recently, had every chance to win that game. I like catching points. And if you look at St. John's, they're almost like that Northwestern of football. Or you bet the underdog in St. John's games. You usually do pretty well, whether it's St. John's is the dog or their opponent is the dog. Well, in this case, St. John's is the dog. They play a lot of close games. I think they can win this one outright as well. So St. John's plus 5 for me against Butler. I'm also going to look toward, I don't know if this is, I think this is more towards 6 o'clock this game, but I'm going to mention it now anyway. South Carolina is the best kept secret nobody's talking about right now. This team, if everybody thought they were going to stink this season, not be any good, lose a lot of key personnel from last year. But we have to remember, Frank Martin's still their coach. He's still a pretty good coach, fiery coach, but a pretty good coach. And you look at South Carolina, they have been a point spread juggernaut in the SEC so far. They've covered every number in every game. They've beaten some decent teams, including Florida, on the road. Now they're playing LSU, getting, I think, 9.5. This number's come down. It was 10.5. It's down to 9 now. South Carolina money's coming in, and I agree with that. LSU off the big road win against Ole Miss, but now they're back home laying points. Will Wade's team has not been a team that's been great laying big points. Chris Silva, by the way, best player for sure on that South Kakalaki team. He had 2 points. That's it. Against Vanderbilt in their last game, and they still won that game, which shows you that South Carolina, they're finding other ways to win. When their best player doesn't have a good shooting night, they're still finding ways. They're still bringing you that tough, rugged, physical brand of defense that you usually get from a team coached by Frank Martin. This is one of the most undervalued ATS teams right now in the entire country. They've been power rated incorrectly from the beginning of SEC conference play. 4-0 against the spread in SEC play so far, South Carolina. I think they can stay inside this number as well. Like in the Gamecocks getting 9.5.
Good breakdown, Ian. Guys, we got one more 4 o'clock game before we move to Virginia, Duke, plus some of the night games. And we got best bets, 2-1 last week. We were a half a point off from a clean sweep. Kentucky, Auburn. This Kentucky team can play some defense. And talk about, Higgins, who can guard the opposing team's point guard very well, something that's very important in team defense. Their last 2 games, Vanderbilt, Georgia, holding them both under 50 points, 47 and 49 respectively. Going into Auburn, in Auburn Arena, it's kind of a different animal here. Ian, would you look at any value on Kentucky, Auburn at all?
Yeah, I mean, I took a shot going against Kentucky, and I was totally off with Georgia the other night, and that's the problem. And that's why I'm staying out of Kentucky games, Drew, because this has happened way too many times for me the last couple seasons, where I picked the wrong day to bet on or bet against Kentucky, because you don't know sometimes, especially in January when Calipari's still trying to get his rotation, anchored down, when he's still trying to figure out what combinations work, when he's still trying to get this team to step up at the defensive end. You just don't know. Are you going to get good Kentucky one day or bad Kentucky one day? Unfortunately, I was on Georgia the other night and I got good Kentucky. They just dominated and rolled in the second half, pulled away in that game. And if I get good Kentucky today, if they play anything like they did against Georgia on the road, they could hang toe-to-toe with Auburn in this game and even win outright. And that's my concern, that maybe that Georgia performance, although Auburn's a better team than Georgia, don't get me wrong, but maybe that's a sign that the switch is getting flipped here for this Kentucky team. They're ready to go on a little bit of a run here. I'm not in any rush to lay these points with Auburn here today. After what I saw from Kentucky last game, total's getting hit in this game. It's really going up. Look, one of the totals I loved the most was last week, and it was a best bet for me on this show, Georgia and Auburn that was as easy as it gets. That game flew over the total. But those are two pace-driven teams, two suspect defensive teams. Auburn can lock it down defensively a little bit better at home. Kentucky finally showed up defensively against Georgia. So I know there's a lot of athleticism, a lot of length, a lot of, people that can put the bucket in the basket or the ball in the basket on both sides. And I can see there's going to be a little bit of pace here. You've still got two teams that are improving, I think, game by game defensively. So I know I was on Auburn over last week, won't be on it this week. And I lead Kentucky, believe it or not, plus points. Maybe that Georgia's game is a sign they're going to get things going a little bit.
And Big Man, do you see any value 4.5 with the Wildcats and War Eagles today?
I don't really like this game, to be honest, because I see viable options for both sides. I wonder, is the turnover problems, are they going to continue for the Wildcats? They've had some trouble this year. Auburn is number one at turning you over. They turn you over 28% of their possessions on defense. That's pretty amazing. That's number one in the country. Yeah, it is. That's a concern. Also, I have some concerns about Auburn and them kind of shooting the lights out against Kentucky. Not only is Kentucky not good defending the three, that perimeter defense has had problems all season, and Auburn is very good at home. They have flipped the switch. You guys have talked about that. Auburn is a team that just shoots the hell out of the ball at home. This could be a game where they kind of put that great game together because, we haven't really seen it from Auburn. They beat some good teams. I think the win against Murray State is obviously better than people think. Beating, Texas A&M by margin's cool and everything, and Dayton. But, you haven't really had that signature great win. Arizona's, that's not a great win, really. You beat Washington, second game of the season. They need to get the job done here at home today. The question is, that 4.5 points could be real crucial. So for me, I'd probably lay it, frankly, but it's not a game. I think the number's kind of right on par. Real quick, one game before we get to Duke, Virginia, I wanted to get into Baylor, Texas Tech quickly. I think this is a good spot for Texas Tech. I think they're another team that really needs that big time. You gotta blow a team out. When's that going to happen for Texas Tech? Because they don't do it. The only teams they're blowing out is Rio Grande and Northwestern State and Abilene Christian. I want you to blow out a quality opponent on the road. I think this could be a good spot for it. This defense, as we know from Baylor, number one in defensive efficiency. They're number one. They're down, number one in really every big time category as far as defensive efficiency categories. This is a Baylor team that is really poor at times on offense, and I think they're going to have a real trouble down low today. Tristan Clark out for the season. That's a big loss in this game because you look at what the Texas Tech Red Raiders have down low. Odiasi, Tariq Owens, guys like that. These are big time players down low and could be real factors today. You look at Baylor and what exactly do they do well on offense? It's really just kind of them struggling. I think Culver takes over in a game like this. I expect them to win by, I'll say 7+. I think they get a double-digit win here down at Baylor. It's going to be a tough one, but not overly a tough trip. It's Texas to Texas. I know Texas is big, but I think we see a good competent defensive performance today from Tech. I think they win at least by 7 or more.
Good stuff, big man. We got KY Derek in the chat box saying Auburn is a tough-ass place to play. It will be nuts there today. And I agree with you, KY. There at Auburn, they got the new arena on campus. Obviously, I'm biased towards them being a graduate, but that place does get wild, especially for big games. Big man, you bring up Texas Tech, Ian and Big Man. Do you think that their profile in the tournament looks very well? I would actually look to bet on them, maybe even a Final Four team, just because they defend the three well. They don't turn it over very well. The number one defensive efficiency team. I like that type of profile in the tournament. Any opinion there, Ian?
You know what? Actually, I totally agree with Texas Tech. I laid the 3.5 with them here against Baylor. This was a fringe top 5 play for me today. It's one of my favorites, actually. Texas Tech still. I think they get the job done. They're off a loss finally. Again, they got kicked down a little bit, lose to Iowa State in their last game, a chance to bounce back strong. I think they're the better team. I certainly think they got the better coach. That is not even an issue here in this game. I certainly think they've got the better coach here with Chris Beard against Scott Drew. I think that's a little bit of a mismatch, for putting it mildly, from a coaching standpoint. Defensively, they're better. And there's no go-to clutch scorer for this Baylor team. We know Texas Tech's got it with Culver. Baylor doesn't have it. Baylor's lost a lot of close games because there's nobody willing to step up, make that big shot late for them. That's going to be a concern in a price range where, we expect this game to be relatively close. I mean, I think Texas Tech will win maybe in high single digits is probably what I think they'll win by. But they'll grind and churn out a win, probably by like 7, 8, 9 points, something like that. That's probably what I see happening. Texas Tech, to me, Drew, is a legitimate, tournament, a team that can do some damage in the tournament. I know everyone thought that after last year they lost so many guys from that team that made that great run in March, but you're seeing Chris Beard being able to coach him up to an excellent level right now. He's gotten this team in a position now where I think they have gotten equity. They bring the defense with them. They're a good free throw shooting team, which is excellent. That's key. There's no doubt in my mind that if in the tournament, they're a dangerous team, and they've certainly got the capability to at least get into the second weekend.
And Big Man, any final thoughts on Texas Tech before we get to Duke, Virginia?
Yeah, I think with your comments about defense and the way they play it, I think your big concern, and look, I'd prefer to have just kind of a happy medium between both offense and defense. I mean, what was the one big tipping point last year? How good Virginia's defense was. Listen, I don't care who you play. If a team comes in and shoots the lights out, it's game over. I don't care if you're playing a 7th grade junior team or you're playing Dream Team. If they come in and can shoot the lights out, you're going to lose. It doesn't matter. There's no defense to a great shooting team. You saw it with UMBC last year. They could have played, the Dream Team and they would have won. That's just how it goes sometimes. I want the happy medium. I want Gonzaga. That's what I want. I want a team like that. That's what, to me, I think, when it's all said and done, I think they're going to be right there because they are so efficient on offense and they are so efficient on defense. I love Virginia. I'm very high on them. I love Texas Tech. I just think at times they get bogged down. And that's one of the reasons I think Virginia is dynamic this year, because they are much better offensively this year as opposed to years past. They've struggled to get into the 60s. You're seeing them put up a lot of points as well as not giving up a lot of points.
He's the big man on campus. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff Nadeau. Ian Cameron also giving great analysis there. Follow him on Twitter at Babano. I'm Drew Martin. You can follow me at Drew Martin Bets. Guys, before we get to Duke, Virginia, do either of you two have a 12 o'clock best bet?
12 o'clock best bet. Miami.
It's your best bet at noon Eastern.
Okay, not for the show, just a noon play. My favorite at noon would be Miami +7. But yeah.
Not on record for your best bet. Okay. Big Man, what about you?
Yeah, if I played one, I'd probably go UCF -6 in the first half. I think they jump out here and really fix some of the defensive problems they had last week. I think it's going to be very difficult for Tulsa to get into the lane and really do what they want. When you can shut down another team offensively and they have to go through random ways, I think what you'll see, it wouldn't surprise me, guys, if we see 2 or 3 shot clock violations in the first half from Tulsa. Just very bogged down possessions. I'll go like a 32-20 first half lead for UCF. The question is, are they going to be able to hold that and kind of just pull away and win by 18? I'll go -6 UCF in the first half. That would be the best bet. I don't love for 12 o'clock games. I'm making that very clear. This is not a premium play of mine. If you're asking me my best one, I will go with that.
Okay, and that's just for the 12 o'clock guys, just to go on record here. That isn't the show's best bets. Just to follow this trend with the best 12 o'clock play, I would actually be on UNC, the Tar Heels, and lay the points going against both Ian and Big Man's opinion there. I'm just fading away on the banged up Hurricanes, even though they are at home.
That's okay. Guaranteed winners right here on Closing Line. Something will win.
Yeah, for sure. Eventually. But we got the 6 o'clock tip, guys, the biggest game on the board. This is a huge card, over 200 teams playing. Virginia at Duke, number 4 team in the country, at the number 1 team in the country, 6 o'clock Eastern, 136 the total. Duke laying 3 in Cameron Indoor. Babano, you want to lead us off? Any opinion here?
This
Virginia
number ain't at 3 anymore, bro.
What's that?
Yeah.
This number's up to 4 at some books.
Is it? Yeah. I'm seeing 3, 3.5, and 4 at SBR odds.
Crazy.
So all over. Have at it, guys.
No freaking way I'm betting against Virginia. Let's put it that way. Now the question is, do you want to take them here? If it keeps climbing, I'll be a buyer at some point, like in this game. And I know it's Cameron Indoor. Virginia's gone into Cameron Indoor and won at Duke before. In the Tony Bennett era, they're more than capable of doing that. You look at what they're doing on a game in, game out basis. They're not just beating teams; they're eviscerating teams. They're absolutely just kicking their asses right out of the basketball court on a nightly basis. I mean, Florida State's not chopped liver. Remember, Duke went down to the wire against that Florida State team. Virginia kicked their ass. Virginia beat them by over 20 points. Virginia, against Clemson on the road last week. We always worry the road team for those early starts. Well, yeah, they were sluggish for a little in that game, but boy, once they pulled it away and got that defense, Clemson had no answers whatsoever. And then last time out against Virginia Tech is not chopped liver, guys. They're not a bad basketball team. Virginia made them look bad. In that game the other night against the Hokies and Buzz Williams' team. I mean, they are looking dominant. And if they can get just a little bit of consistency with their jump shooting, with Kyle Guy's got to keep shooting the way he has, and Ty Jerome keep offensively chipping in at the level he has. If they can do that, man, it's a scary team. Now, there's the naysayers and the people that are anti-Virginia will say, oh, but they choke in March. Oh, in the NCAA tournament, they get knocked out earlier than they normally should. That's true. But I know in the ACC conference season, maybe that's going to happen to them again in March, where they fall short, they get knocked out early. But I know right now, just like they were last season in the ACC regular season, they're not a team I have in any rush to go against right now. We talk about the Trey Jones injury. I think Virginia's defense is going to make this it's a very talented Duke team, but a young Duke team, frustrate them a little bit. Yeah, for me, it's Virginia or pass.
Big man, this is my best bet, so I'll hold off. I'll let you go at it first. Your opinion on Virginia Duke, man?
Well, listen, if you know anything about me, you know that I love basketball 100%. It's my favorite. I love the matchups. I love breaking them down. I love watching it. This is so fast. This is about as fascinating as it gets. And I want to make this clear. I don't have a play on this game. I'm not going to be betting on it. I can make cases for both sides, but I'm looking at this line. I mean, you look at it started where at some books they put a 4 out there for Duke. It immediately got bet down to 2.5. Immediately. Then it was at 1.5 at one point for Duke. Now they're up to 4. So it's a fascinating move. And, guys, I look at the one game where I think we can kind of look at it and say, is this one where everyone gets got and at home this is a close game for 55 or for 45 minutes, 35 minutes, and then Duke turns on a little switch, gets one of those big-time threes from Barrett, then they run out on a steal, they go up 6, and it's like, it's Texas Tech all over again. Because Texas Tech is a very similar profile to Virginia. The problem that Texas Tech had and why they didn't win that game, they turned the ball over too much, and they weren't as fluid offensively. Virginia is a much better offensive team. Problem is, it's a road game, a true road game. You got one of the best crowds in the country bearing down on you, and Duke is athletic. They're glitzy, they're glammy, but without Trey Jones, I can't put a comparable wager on Duke. I just think a guy like that is very critical to your team. He plays a lot of minutes. He puts a lot into it. And look, are they athletic? Sure. And are they going to be a tough matchup? Yeah, but this is Virginia's coming out party probably. But that line just – it's about as fascinating as it gets. I won't be on the game, but I'll be watching it intently. I think it's as good a game as it's going to get.
All right, guys, we're
That
running
is
down.
definitely, I believe that's Dan Shulman and Jay Billis, too. So they got the number one crew there. So that tells you how big the game's going to be.
Are those your two favorite guys?
Dan Shulman's Canadian. How can I not love the guy?
And you like Jay Billis too?
He's good. I do like Jay. Jay's good. He'll rip the refs from time to time, too. That is an awful call. And he'll say it in that voice. That is an awful call. And, he doesn't hold back. They're a great tandem, both of those guys, Dan and Jay. I'll listen to them all the time.
I'll tell you what, though, he's as bad as it gets for predictions, Billis. Like he is brutal, but he is a guy that doesn't let like the man bother him. I think he's a lawyer, honestly. I want to say he is. Yeah, and he definitely goes out and makes his opinion known, which I have to respect. Listen, as long as Dick Vitale or Bill Walton's not on the call, I'm very interested. I'm fine with those two.
I'll say overall, guys, the college basketball announcers are as a group are my favorite.
They're the best.
Bill Walton,
Fran Fraschilla
is amazing.
He's as good as it gets. He's like the Mount Rushmore of college basketball. Him and like guys like I don't know if anyone's ever heard Caron Butler's actually somewhat good on games. Corey, there's a guy that played at Virginia. He's really good. Brooke Weisbrod's good also. She does a lot of like minor games, but they are really good, a lot of the announcers.
Guys, with this Virginia Duke game, I think the Trey Jones injury is a lot bigger than people, really realize. I think you were onto that too, big man. He's the guy that distributes it to the talented Duke team. But going up against it is a young Duke talent, and going up against this UVA defense, I think they're going to be up against it a little bit. I think that UVA offensively isn't the Virginia team of old. I think that this team can actually shoot better and score the basketball better. And if you're giving me 4 points, which on SBR odds right now, this is a great game to shop around. We're seeing anywhere from 3, 3.5 to 4. You can catch 4 right now at Intertops. You can catch 4 at 5 dimes right now. So you're giving me 4. This is actually my best bet. I'll lock it in. I'm on Virginia plus 4.
Hey, Drew, also, I think one thing lost on people that aren't – they're obviously Trey Jones is a great point guard, and he's a dynamic kid, but he is their best defender, Trey Jones. I mean, with him in there, I want to make this clear, guys. From a points per possession standpoint, he is as good as it gets. They are as good as it gets with him. He is extremely important to what they do, not only on offense but on defense, and that's why he's so missed. Look, is he more talented than Cameron Reddish? No. Is he more talented than Barrett? No. I'm not going to try to say that, but he is very important to the complexity of how they go. So just remember defensively, he is really big for what they do.
Okay. And guys, just gave out my best bet. Over 300 people watching right now. If we could get to 100 likes, that would be great. If you could hit that like button, it would help big man Ian and myself out a lot, guys. Right before we get to best bets, guys, because we are running out of time, is there anything else you want to throw out there, particularly in that 9 o'clock Eastern and later? So some of these guys have we all can get a get back game of sorts, maybe the BYU San Francisco, Montana Idaho, Air Force Nevada. Any of these late games kind of tickling your fancy? Ian, we can start off with you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the late card, when you look at it, Mississippi State -3 against Vanderbilt kind of interests me a little bit. I think it's a get well game for Mississippi State. I think they're better than Vanderbilt. It's been a little bit of a swoon for Ben Howland's team. He's called out his team defensively a little bit as well. They haven't played that well at that end of the court lately. Another loss the other night against Florida. So I think this is a chance for them to get well because Vanderbilt's really, really scuffling. I mean, they gave up that lead against South Kakalaki in their last game. I think Mississippi State -3 looks a little bit cheap to me. When I look at the late games there, Oregon, Arizona State, Oregon +3.5 is kind of interesting to me there in that game. Oregon starting to, even without Bull, starting to gain some traction. They blew out USC last game against Arizona, wire-to-wire win for Oregon on the road in Tucson. I know it's not a vintage Sean Miller Arizona Wildcat team, but Oregon is starting to put some things together, and I don't trust Arizona State right now. I mean, you saw them almost cough up a lung and give away that game against Oregon State the other night. And if you were an Arizona State backer, it was a brutal beat because they were up by 12, and then they only end up winning by 3, and if you laid the -4. That's as bad as it gets. So I like Oregon a little bit there in that one. And as good as Houston's playing South Florida. I think there's money to be made with South Florida. This is a feisty team. I cashed with South Florida against Cincinnati the other night, catching double digits. They're catching 5.5, 6 at home against Houston. Houston's great. Not easy case to make betting against this Houston team. Kelvin Sampson continues to do a great job with them. But South Florida's only lost one game at home this season. They've been very good in the underdog role. I think Brian Gregory, the coach of that team, is finally getting that team to play good. They've got some more offensive capabilities this season, a few more better offensive pieces. They still play pretty good defense. The one concern for South Florida is don't turn the ball over. And turnovers got them into a little bit of trouble the other night against Cincinnati. If you turn the ball over too much against Houston, you're in some trouble. I like South Florida, though, to really give Houston a game there, getting 6, 5.5.
Ian, I love that you brought up this game. South Florida, their mentality offensively has really changed. A bunch of their games have had 50-plus free throws. They're driving to the basket. I would look to be on USF as well and also bet their games over. A lot of stoppage time. They're hitting their free throws or having a lot of free throw attempts. That's a good over mix as well. Big man, what about you? Anything you want to throw out there?
Yeah, LaQuincy Riddell is a great player. He is a guy that gets to the basket for the Bulls. Alexis Ayetna as well. He's been really dynamic. That's a good team down there. Brian Gregory's done a nice job with them. They're scrappy. They play hard. The American is as good a conference you're going to find. East Carolina's scrappy down at the bottom. All these teams play hard, and there's a good future for that conference in basketball. A couple from me. I think I'll get to my best bet final, but I think Oklahoma is real valuable today. I'm not really sure why Texas is a 5-point favorite here. It doesn't make any sense to me, frankly. I don't know why people love this team so much. They're the most overrated athletic program in America, and Chaga Smarts is about as fraudulent as it gets. This guy doesn't win anything. His defensive tactics suck. They don't ever do anything that's worth talking about. And his recruiting has, other than as far as Bomba's been pretty bad. I like Oklahoma. I think they get back on the horse today and get the job done here. Oregon, I think Ian makes a great point with. I kind of thought they'd go and beat Arizona the other night. This is a tough thing to do, though, win in both the Arizona games. It's kind of like going to Colorado and Utah. Very difficult. I think Weber State has some value. I like this team. I bet on them last week. Northern Colorado is a solid group, but I think Weber kind of pulls away. I think Weber's front court's too good for the Bears. Jeff Linder's done a nice job out there, but I think Weber at home might be worth a look here. My best bet on this show is going to be Gonzaga. I'm going to lay the big number with the Bulldogs here. I think they destroy Portland. They've won the last, I think, 6 games. Outside of the San Francisco game, they've won by 43.5 points a game. They're going to absolutely destroy the Pilots. The Portland's as bad as it gets. I mean, I don't really know how else to say Portland. I mean, Portland is basically Pacific, like a mini Pacific. And if anyone saw what happened in that game, it wasn't good. Portland is going to have major problems on offense tonight. They're one of the youngest teams in the country. And you have a team in Gonzaga now that I think is full strength. Killian Tilly's back. He's got a couple games under his belt. He's been able to give them a lot of minutes. And you know what I like about Gonzaga, guys? A lot of people would say, well, maybe the first half, maybe you want to bet them in that kind of standpoint. And why I love that as well. You look at what Mark Few does. Mark Few doesn't take his foot off the gas. I mean, Mark Few destroys teams. That's what he does. They don't have any kind of look-ahead games here. They went to Portland over the last few years and really beat them up because their crowd travels. It's not a long trip for their fans. They go down to Oregon. They support. And you look at, like, all their starters. I mean, let's say you pull your starters in this game if you're Few. I mean, Crandall, Tilly, they're all going to get big minutes in this game because they've been out. You want to get those guys back to game shape. Philip Petrusev, Jeremy Jones, all these guys are kind of that second unit for Gonzaga, can give you a ton of minutes. They're such a deep team that it really hasn't mattered, and they have stayed focused, and that's why they beat teams by 40 and 50 because they don't let up. If you're Gonzaga, in your head, you have to win every game by 40. That's what you do. You go and you fucking destroy teams. They're going to destroy Portland tonight. 94-54. They destroy Portland and win by 50. Give me Gonzaga.
Gonzaga minus the points. Jordan agreeing with you, saying Portland is the dump of the WCC. So kind of fade Portland as much as bet Gonzaga, it sounds like. Ian, what about you? Follow Ian on Twitter, @Babano. What do you got for best bets, man?
Before I get to best bet, couple in the West Coast Conference, because it's getting a lot of talk in the chat right now. Santa Clara, yes, underrated ATS team lately. They have been covering a bunch of numbers, no question about that. Herb Sendek's team, starting. I think this is one of his better teams since he's gotten there. They've been very competitive. They finally didn't cover the other night against St. Mary's, but I think now that gives you some more value to get back on that Santa Clara Broncos train here tonight. They're catching 6.5 against Pacific. Pacific is off a crushing loss the other night against San Francisco and found a way to cough that one up. I think Santa Clara plus the points worth a look there. And speaking of San Francisco, I think they're laying 6.5, 7 to BYU. BYU decided to finally cover for the first time in ages on the road on the night that I went against them on the road with Pepperdine the other night, so that frustrated me. But I think BYU is still not a trustworthy team for me on the road. Now they got to do it against a much, much better team, the San Francisco Dons. Let's not forget, San Francisco Dons gave Gonzaga everything they could handle on that home court recently in a game that was right down to the wire. Gonzaga pulled away late. A horrible beat if you had San Francisco in that game against Gonzaga. It was a terrible way to lose your bet. I think San Francisco has a chance to roll maybe BYU in that game. I'd lean to lay in the points there. Best bet, I could go in a bunch of different directions. I consider South Carolina. That was close. There's a bunch of them that were close, but I'm going to go to a game that Big Man just mentioned briefly just now, actually, and a game that we're both in agreement on. And this number's climbing, and I don't get it at all. I'm going to go Oklahoma +5 against Texas here in this game in Big 12 action. Texas, to me, I don't trust them, not one bit. And if you look at Oklahoma, if you think Oklahoma is any good this season, and they're not going to fall off a cliff in Big 12 play like they did last season, I think you have to take them +5 here in this spot. They've alternated wins and losses. I think you get them in a good bounce-back situation here after the home loss to Kansas State, and they've been great on the road, 3-0 against the spread so far on the road. They've had some of their better performances there. They hung tough at Kansas on the road, hung tough at Texas Tech on the road. But Texas is not as good as Texas Tech, and Texas is not as good as Kansas. I think Oklahoma is not only going to hang tough in this game, they're going to find a way to maybe win this game. I like Oklahoma +5 against Texas, and they're rebounding. You got to be able to rebound the ball against Texas. Oklahoma can do that. They're a very good rebounding team. I think they had an off night shooting against Kansas State. I think they get back to it here in this game. They're focused off a bad loss at home, and I think you get Lon Kruger team bringing their A game here tonight in Austin. I'll go Oklahoma +5 for best bet.
All right, we got the over hit on the like button. We appreciate that, guys. We got 107, so over of 100 hits. Ian Cameron, follow him on Twitter @Babano. He's on Oklahoma +5. We got Big Man on Campus. Follow him on Twitter @Jeff Nadeau. Gonzaga -27, and I'm on Virginia +4. Guys, that's best bets. Anything else you want to throw out before we shut this down?
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Great show. Always a lot of fun.
Yeah, great jam-packed show. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, running you into tip-off for the huge Saturday cards. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Best of luck with your bets. We'll see you next Saturday.
Thanks, everybody.